Welcome to episode number 13 of Yucaipa 360. Many in the community and in the local government profession have noticed that the City of Yucaipa has had some tremendous successes in recent months. Over the past 2 years, the City Council and City Administration have very intentionally refocused City Hall on the priorities that matter most to residents, that is, public safety, road maintenance, transparency, etc., and worked to find long-term solutions to a large and crippling structural budget deficit. The results are now speaking for themselves. The number of homeless individuals on the streets of Yucaipa has been reduced by 82%. Aggressive enforcement actions against known criminals and drug houses in the community have reduced crime, so much so that Yucaipa was just named the safest city of our size in California and the 9th safest in the entire nation. By shifting restricted capital improvement project funding to prioritize the maintenance of existing roads, the City Council allocated a record $4.1 million this fiscal year towards road maintenance and repairs, the most in the city's history. The city has become more transparent than ever, launching the transparency portal on the city's website, posting copies of contracts, broadcasting video of City Council and Planning Commission meetings, hosting numerous town hall-style community meetings on a variety of important topics, and drastically increasing information pushed out over social media, including this podcast. With the successful passage by voters this past November of Measure S, a renegotiated contract with our solid waste hauler Burtec, by increasing cost recovery for city events and programming, and by tightening the belt at City Hall, the city is well on its way to fiscal recovery. We've also had significant wins on the economic development front, and we have a very big announcement to make today about a business that is coming to town that we think a lot of people will be very excited about. More on that in a minute. For those who have been watching and listening to Yucaipa 360, we're going to do something a little different with this episode. Typically, this is a long-form podcast, meaning that in each episode we have an in-depth discussion on a particular topic. However, there are a lot of recent developments we'd like to update the community on, and as we drop a new episode only once every 2 weeks, it would take a very long time to get all of this information out, one topic at a time. So today, we're going to hit on a number of topics that we know are of interest to residents in a more rapid-fire manner. We have 5 topics, 5 separate guests, and we'll aim for each segment to last no more than 10 or 15 minutes. We have a lot to cover today, so let's jump right in. To start off, we're happy to have our housing and economic development analyst, Ryan Miller. And Ryan, we have a huge announcement to make today.
We do, sir.
Yeah. Some may have noticed the billboard on the freeway that has a cryptic message that says, number 268 is coming. All right. Ryan, do you know what that's all about?
I do, sir. Okay. I do, absolutely. If you'd like me to, I can kind of just jump right in it with you.
Well, do you want to tell us, or should we watch a video that tells us?
Let's do the video.
All right, let's watch the video.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Grocery run. Where are we going?
Trader Joe's, where else?
Why is it closest Trader Joe's 20 minutes away? Like, that's ridiculous.
Seriously, every time we go, it's like a whole road trip. We should get frequent flyer miles or something.
What do you think about doing a petition to have one brought to Yucaipa on the Yucaipa Bulletin?
I like it. I'd vote for that twice.
Yucaipa gonna rise, stars and stripes in our skies. New places to eat and shop. Rural heart will never stop.
Brian, that is incredibly exciting,
isn't it?
Tell me how this came to be. So often people say, "Gosh, I wish they would bring this to Yucaipa," or "Why are they building that? I wish they would bring this." Right? Well, so often Trader Joe's is that thing they're talking about, right?
Yes.
So this is a huge win. How did this happen?
Yeah, you're 100% right. It is a huge win for the community, not only for our entire community that's going to shop there, the out-of-town sales tax base that we're going to capture from people coming in and visiting it, having it off our main thoroughway on the 10 freeway in Yucaipa Boulevard, a Trader Joe's, our very own Trader Joe's. And yes, it does have more parking spots than other Trader Joe's that are around here.
Are the aisles wider?
I'm not sure if the aisles are wider, but it is a bigger building, which is fantastic. And it's actually a great development story. And a lot of it we haven't been able to share to this point, for confidentiality reasons and negotiating deals. The city didn't have much of a part in this as much as you would assume that we would. The private developer, Vantage One, Mr. Tom Robinson, made a promise to the city before coronavirus when he started developing Yucaipa Pointe to bring quality uses to whatever he's going to build there for buildings. And through coronavirus, the hard times, the white truck era in Yucaipa off the boulevard, he held true to what he promised. And we threw a hard one at him, and that was to go get a Trader Joe's. And through making the contacts, him having relationships in the development community to make that connection quickly, he landed one of the biggest, most sought-after clients in the United States right now. They are in a multitude of different states. They have over 400 locations. We are going to be store number 268, as you had mentioned. So the cryptic messaging, the online response we've had, it's been a great buzz into the community, and that's made its way back actually into the Trader Joe's organization, and then also through the development of Tom Robinson as well. He's starting to become a little bit of more of a legend than he already is, because this deal from hello to signed to construction was less than 14 months. That's the whole process from saying hello and getting them to do it. Trader Joe's really put some tough requirements, such as the confidentiality and not being able to say anything, and kind of the buzz going around. But we've done a good job with that, and now we're excited to just speak about it now, which is wonderful. But putting that deal together that quick with some impossible requirements and milestones not only took commitment from Trader Joe's and then also to Tom being Vantage One, the developer, but also from the city. Yes. We didn't do anything special for him that we would do for different than any other business that's out there. When you come to the city, you submit a project. We're going to get it permitted in time. We're going to get you the corrections in time. You're going to send them back hopefully in an expeditious time. And if you do that as well, we can move our systems as they are designed to be quick. More times than not, we're getting backed up from different, parts of the development. But this is a great story in that 13 months from doing it.
Well, I'd like to give kudos where it's due, too, right?
Thank
I
you.
mean, you did a great job here, ushering this in, and our whole team here. When this came to us, we had a big meeting. We got all the departments together, and we said, "Listen, we have to make this happen for Yucaipa." Right? We got everyone in a room. We had the planning department personnel there, building and safety. I mean, just across the board. Okay. We're going to do this by the book, but we need to be completely coordinated with the applicant on this, right?
Yeah.
How can we make sure that we don't lose any time from one step to the next, right?
Yeah.
And that was necessary in order to meet the tight timeline that was dictated by Trader Joe's. If we weren't able to do that, then the project would have gone away, right?
Oh, it's very true.
And so I was very impressed to watch you and planning and building and safety, just everybody working in concert together to make sure this happened for our community.
Yeah, you hit a word there, concert. This is a great, public-private partnership type of development, from a specific plan and coming all the way through. It is a very, very good win for us. And yes, myself, our team that we're surrounded by, put in 100% effort on this. We didn't slow any projects down while doing this in the interim. We basically just used the system that we have, as I mentioned, and plugged it into it and just made sure that what we could do, we did. And it's amazing what can happen in development when you have stakeholders that are ready. You have a city that has helped prepare a property, whether it's infrastructure, zoning, the requirements, the conditions, speaking with the community and the resident neighbors on what potentially could be there, doing all that in the forefront, and having a project come to life and seeing it done this fast and in this, system that we have. It's possible for anybody. We just put ourselves on the map with booking Trader Joe's in that fashion with other big players that are out there. I have the pleasure, as you let me go to multiple real estate, different, things between Riverside County and San Bernardino County. And we just went to an event, and there was two funny things that really came from that everybody would almost laugh at like it was a joke. And the number one thing that everybody said was, "Oh, well, we all want a Trader Joe's." And it was like a funny thing. The whole entire room laughs. And I'm like just biting the back of my tongue and kicking Ben in the back of his calf. And I'm like, I can't believe we actually did it. So
it's been so hard not to be able to say anything because it's just, it's a huge honor to be able to announce bringing something like that to the city. As huge as that is, it's not the only success we're having. I mean, there's
very
other
true.
exciting things going on. Talk about some of the other exciting things that are coming down the pipeline.
Absolutely. Same location right there in Yucaipa Pointe, next to that Trader Joe's shell you see going up now.
Yep.
You're going to start seeing the tenant improvements after that shell is done with Trader Joe's coming in. Well, just to the east of that, as you're kind of backing up to what is the Kaiser Permanente property, there's another restaurant use that's there. And it's a really good square footage. Back into can't talk too much about it, but it's going to be just as exciting as Trader Joe's is. The tenant has gone as far as going to submit the project, and that means that we're well down the road of agreements and seeing if things can actually happen. So in addition to this great news about Trader Joe's that our community is going to respond well to, you're going to have something right next to it that's going to be just as awesome, just as beneficial, just as much excitement in the community as well. And if you don't mind, too, on that note, one thing that's been really nice during these last few weeks is it's kind of gotten out to the community in the ways that it did, is seeing the positive comments, the responses online, the people in Yucaipa that want to have something here, and there's so many of them, and they have a thirst for it. Now, Trader Joe's is that's prime 1A right there. So now we've really set the bar, Chris, on what we're going to bring. So we have to be very cautious on what we're going to do for development. Obviously, we always do. But that's a great point there. As the city gets bigger wins, we're going to get more attention. The more attention gives us more opportunity. Now, that doesn't mean that the properties we have in town that are available, whether they're infill projects or bigger areas like the freeway corridor, those types of bigger projects will come online eventually. If they do, they don't, how it is. But what's happening in the market right now are these more prime 1A, Chick-fil-A is one of them. You have Raising Cane's, which is going to be opening up very soon here across the high school. Yep. Those are prime 1As, and they're very particular on the cities that they go in, the demographics, the studies of where they want to go. But even more importantly, they really pinch the cities. If you're a business and you're successful, you're opening multiple locations, you're starting to grow, you're putting your money back into your business, you're really investing. You're going to be very, very careful on how you expand, right? Mm-hmm. Most people want to do the other way. They want to expand first and think if I have more, the people will come. Well, that's usually not a prime A business. At least it takes quite a while to get off the ground. So if they're really good at doing one thing, they're going to be really good at getting it to that point, and that means developing the project. So a lot of these prime 1A style uses that every city wants, you have to have pretty much the perfect property ready, the studies done, the infrastructure in the right way to have the opportunity to even pencil it out with these types of uses. And to go through that experience of having an opportunity with the 1A, using our systems that we already have in place that fit the schedule, and the developer making the ultimate commitment to kind of get the building going kind of out of his liability before Trader Joe's would get some of those commitments done. And watching that happen really motivated our team, I would say, to what can't we get? It's just a matter of that.
Well, speaking of what can't we get, I mean, I think everybody would acknowledge that what we're really missing here in Yucaipa, what we really need are more gas stations, car washes, tire shops, Mexican food restaurants, right? So let's talk about Yucaipa Gateway.
Yeah.
So Yucaipa Gateway is, Oak Glen Road. It's right next to the new La Quinta, and there's more coming there, right? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, exactly right. As you know, the La Quinta is now has occupancy. They've been running for over a year. They're bringing not only a great sales tax base and tourism that's coming in, but we're also capitalizing on the TOT tax. That's been big beneficial. The few hotels, motels that we had in town were bringing pennies on the dollar compared to what that brings on a weekend. So it's very, very nice for us. They have, of course, did the ARCO and AM/PM. That's been a 7 or 8 year project. It's been tough. Yeah. And mainly because you had Highway 99 going through there. Dunlap Boulevard goes right through what is their property now. Yeah. So we had to do the bridge over the wash. And right now we're finishing cleaning up the utility lines with SCE. And as soon as they move those lines, which should be done, somewhere in March, I'm hoping. I would love to say the beginning. That's what they say, but I'm very cautious on timelines for anybody. So hopefully by March, they'll get that move. Once that moves, we already have 2 entitlements for 2 more uses. It's wonderful. One of them's a Starbucks. It's going to be right there, right next to La Quinta, kind of catty corner, right next to the Arco gas station, if you will, which is just across the freeway from the Live Oak Pumpkin Patch, which gets hundreds of thousands of unique visitors that aren't from Yucaipa in a couple of months during season. And then you have a QSR next to that, a quick service restaurant. a fast casual dining. They haven't named who that tenant will be. I think they're still searching. So if anybody out there has a need for a 2,500 square foot brand new kitchen build, there's an opportunity at the Gateway to contact Mr. Haddad and ACAA's development team. That was a great spot and a great use that's there. So we should see that in the next few months. Finally really cleaning up that area, getting the extra buildings built.
Great. You brought some drone footage. Let's take a look. Okay, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so you're looking exactly what I was explaining. So where you see that semi truck just outside of that fuel canopy there, where the front of that truck is kind of heading towards the exit of what would be the future Starbucks, which is kind of where that telephone pole is, and right directly in the middle of the property.
Okay.
And then you have just to the west of that, as you're going like towards the La Quinta, that will be the second building. You're going to have plenty of parking spots that are in that area. You'll have the basin that's over there finish up its development with those two projects, or that one project with the two buildings as well. So you're going to have a super clean pad there. You're going to have brand new asphalt, parking spots, nice striping, 2 more uses. That excites me, excites people that are in the economic development realm. It's not just about having our uses here and having vacancies low and people and businesses in the buildings is important. But one thing that's really exciting for us and what we do is getting a new building, something new that's going to be expanding, and it's bringing up the value of not only the properties that are around it, whether they're residential, commercial properties, providing more opportunity off of the highway. You're also, now that you have a building and a structure, you're producing property tax off of that, which goes a portion of it to the city as well. So one kudos I will say to this project is you're staring at it, and it's been an 8-year thing. The ACAA team has worked well with us, just as well as Vantage One has, through all of the struggles and things that it takes when you're going through a pandemic and trying to develop and letting interest rates in the market doing what it's doing. But this is the Oak Glen corridor, and this was the start of kind of the city's vision years ago. So we had spent, as you're aware, sir, a couple $100 million on the basins in Wilson 3, which is that channel that runs behind La Quinta, all the way past Yucaipa Boulevard and such. And all of those improvements, as I had mentioned on the podcast on episode 7, was to reduce the FEMA floodplain. We actually took over 1,000 properties out of the floodplain, which not only provides opportunities for those people that were in it to no longer have to purchase flood insurance, they also can make improvements to their property now. They can add that extra bedroom. They can actually make the nice backyard with the awning and things like that, because when you're in a floodplain, you're not allowed to expand on your property.
Right.
That was step one, was the infrastructure. It took years to do, and because of our city's commitments of councils of past and currently now, they've continued to understand that infrastructure is really what brings opportunity to the table. So building that infrastructure, reducing the FEMA floodplain. Then when we went through our housing element update, we took the Oak Glen corridor and turned it into a commercial corridor. So what you see there now as you're heading from this image that you're looking at, I guess it would be to the right of the screen, as you're heading north up Oak Glen Road, on the left-hand side, you're going to have another, you're not going to have just a gas station that's going there. You're going to have, it's over 20 Tesla stations that will be put in there as well.
Yeah. And we got a drone shot of this location.
Sure,
So we're talking about Oak Glen Road in Colorado here.
We are. Now, this right here, what you're looking at, is the Alex Patel project.
Right.
That building on the right is the state-of-the-art conveyor belt car wash, rock star party. Kids are going to want to go there to get their car done. And then this is a unique use you're looking at here. That's his convenience store. And then on top of that is the corporate building, if you will, or corporate offices for Alex's development team, SG Opal. So there's 6 or 7 offices, a conference room, and a nice big patio up top for them. And then that convenience store, when you walk into it, it's massive. It's a beautiful building. Like, you have to see this thing. The coolers are all the way around the back. That's going to have a huge coffee bar that's in it. He really wanted to use state-of-the-art equipment and keep the windows open. So the soda machine he's using is something different than you've ever seen. He's really put a lot of detail into that. And him and other projects, all the ones we've mentioned, I think it's one thing to take out between all of those is these people have had dreams and they wanted to come through. And some of them took a while, because it does. But their images came to life, and man, they're making our city quite beautiful.
Well, for those who don't know, Alex Patel is the owner of Freedom Gas Station on the Boulevard and Bryant. Alex and his wife, they're a fixture in our community. They're Yucaipa people, and just kind of the epitome of the American dream too. We ought to have him on at some point. And
be great.
He's a great businessman, and just a good local Yucaipa resident.
Well, if I could drop a hint, sir, that project, his dream, and this guy makes things happen, is to do his grand opening on 4th of July, being Freedom Gas, the American people. He's actually taking he put an application in, and it'll have to go through the process for approval, but that new stoplight of where his Colorado and Oak Glen Road, the sign that is basically pointing to his property on that sign, he wants to change that to say Freedom Way. So I mean, he's really all in on it. And they're a great family to have in town. They not only develop projects selfishly for their own gain, but they actually own quite a few different commercial spots in town and rent out to some of our longstanding businesses, and the people that are owning businesses forever but not necessarily struggling to do it. That's what most businesses do. So it's nice to see that there's people out there that have the funds, the means to help the community and buy other properties and keep tenants going at lower rates and things. That's nice.
Well, Ryan, you are essentially a department of one here in the city, and it is unbelievable how much we have going on with economic development right now, and you're doing a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
We could spend an entire episode going over all of it. In fact, we did in episode 7. So for those of you who haven't had a chance to check out episode 7, go check it out. But we had this big announcement, and we really wanted to make it here on this platform. And thank you for all the great work you're doing.
Thank you, sir. Looking forward to doing more.
Thank you.
You got it.
Well, here in Yucaipa, public safety is always recognized as local government's #1 priority. And over the past couple of years, we've had some tremendous successes in the area of public safety. We're happy to have with us today our public safety manager, Trevor Benson. And Trevor was actually the very first guest on Yucaipa 360.
Thank you for
Welcome.
allowing me to be back on.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of people who, after that, discouraged us from having you back ever.
I don't blame them.
But we're happy to have you back. So, public safety is really the foundation of a thriving community, right? I mean, a strong commitment to public safety fosters economic growth and enhances quality of life by ensuring that our residents and visitors and businesses feel safe and secure. We've had some major successes.
We have.
Let's talk about those.
Well, the first thing comes to my mind is Vivint Home Security named the city of Yucaipa one of the 10 safest cities in the United States.
Number 9, actually.
Well, I say one of the 10, but yes, number 9.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And the safest city for our size in the entire state of California.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
No.
It's a big win for the city, but moreover, I think it's a big win for the deputies that are out there doing the hard work every single day.
Well, a ranking like that doesn't happen by accident. So let's talk about some of the things that have led to that success. And the very first thing that comes to my mind is our homeless strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to go back, 2 years and then, take a look back starting 2 years ago, I think you would see that homelessness was increasing on the streets of Yucaipa. Crime and blight related to homelessness were increasing. And a lot of people felt that maybe the city wasn't taking as an aggressive approach as we could have been.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, shift in council priorities and tackling the homeless issue became a top priority here in Yucaipa. So we sat down, we wrote the homeless strategic. In fact, you wrote the first draft of the plan in-house, and then I worked on it, and Joe Perdetto worked on it. City Attorney's Office had a hand in it. And so instead of going out and, hiring an expensive consultant to come and write a plan, we did it in-house. Part of that plan included the SOP team, the Solutions-Oriented Policing Team, the creation of the SOP team, first time ever in the city of Yucaipa. And that team is out on the street every day. It includes a couple sheriff's deputies. It includes a newly created designated code enforcement officer position for the SOP team that just focuses on those homeless issues.
Yep.
And then behavioral health social workers from the county, and of course they coordinate with our public works rangers and our public works personnel. And so that team goes out every single day and has had a huge impact on the community.
Massive impact on the community. I think everyone sees it from just driving around. I hear it, when I'm in the community. People come up and say, I don't know what you guys have done, but I hardly see anybody anymore. Yeah.
We've had business owners in the Uptown who've made a lot of, one of those business owners came to a city council meeting and stood up at the podium and said, we're recognizing what you're doing. We're seeing the difference, and we really
That's awesome.
Appreciate it. So 2 years ago, every year, every January, countywide, there's something called the Homeless Point in Time Count.
Correct.
And it's what it sounds like. Volunteers and sheriff's personnel span the county, and they literally count every homeless person they encounter on the street. And so in 2022, before we launched this program, or actually, in 2023 it would have been.
Correct.
January of 23, there were 22 homeless individuals counted on the streets of Yucaipa.
Yeah, 22 unhoused.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep. And we know that there were probably actually more than that, but it's a snapshot. It's the number of people that are actually counted on that day. So while it may not be perfectly accurate, it is a way to track from year to year the trend. Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's not something the city coordinates. It's done by the county countywide.
Well, I think it should be mentioned that when this comes out, there's an option. You can use city staff and employees to do this count, or you could say take a hands-off approach and say we want the county to do this count. That way, there's no kind of argument as to what the numbers are, and that's the choice that we took. We took a hands-off approach and let the county run with it, and the county really did everything.
Yeah, yeah. So January of 2024, a little over a year ago, point in time count happens again, and our numbers dropped. Keep in mind at that point, the SOP team had only really been on the street for about 3 months because they hit the ground, boots on the ground in October of 23. So January of 24, the point in time count happens, and our number drops about 41%.
41%.
Right. So in a short period of time, that was a huge impact. Right. January of this year, 25, point in time count happens again.
Correct.
The numbers are not official, right? The county has not released the official numbers, but we know what the number is, don't we?
Well, our unhoused liaison officer and / code enforcement officer, Diana Serrano, who is on the SOP team, helps the county coordinate this event. And she's sitting in the room, making sure that the people who are counting, are within our city boundaries, not collecting numbers outside of our city boundaries and so forth. So she kind of had a general idea of how many were counted this year.
Right.
And it's significantly lower than even last year.
Right. I think without throwing a number out, I mean, I don't want to, steal the county's thunder here when they come out with the number, but I think what we're going to see is, a number that shows a reduction in the unhoused individuals on our streets from 2 years ago of over 80%.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, which is tremendous. It is so much success in that area that other cities are now contacting us saying, can we meet with you and talk with you about this plan?
Yeah, multiple cities have come to us asking how we created this plan. What contractor did we hire to create the plan? We said we did it in-house.
Yeah.
People asked if they can steal it,
Right.
And we actually just went to another county and gave a presentation on how we developed the plan, how we came up with, our 5-step process, and really how it's impacted our city.
Right.
So it's been great.
No, it's been phenomenal. And, one of the things that I'm proud about the program as well is that while on the one hand, we're taking an aggressive approach to law enforcement, right? We're also really helping people, right?
We are.
It is not just about kicking people out of town. We don't do that, right?
Nope.
We go out and we find people who are in need of help and we offer them services and we offer to help, right? But at the same time, being homeless is not an excuse to commit crime on the streets of Yucaipa.
Correct. Every single week, the SOP team's out there contacting people who are homeless in our town, and every single week there's successes. Every single week, I get a report or somebody tells me that, hey, we found somebody housing, here. Hey, we got this person into a drug treatment facility. Hey, we took this person to get their driver's license and social security card. And that's our employees, our SOP team, putting them in our car and actually driving them to their appointments. And that driver's license, that social security card helps them get government benefits, which will help them get off the streets.
Right.
So huge successes.
Yeah. And we know that homelessness doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? I mean, typically there are connected issues, right? Someone has, is dealing with mental illness or drug addiction, drug abuse. And I think a lot of people would be surprised here in Yucaipa just how much of a problem drugs have been historically in the community.
Yeah, somebody once said that Yucaipa doesn't have a homeless problem; they have a drug problem, and they're not wrong. I don't know what the numbers are, but probably somewhere in the range of 95% of our homeless population all have an addiction problem, and that addiction problem, for the most part, is narcotics.
And so often with addiction comes crime.
Absolutely, they got to feed that drug habit, and most don't have jobs,
Right.
so you got to get money somehow.
Right. So a lot of our success in terms of our crime stats, I think, is connected with the our approach to this homeless issue in town. But it's not solely that. I mean, we've been aggressive in other areas as well. A lot of people don't know about your position as our public safety manager. It's kind of a unique position. You manage our contracts with our police and fire departments, which is huge. I mean, that's over 60%, over 70% now of our overall budget, right? But you also have unique background. You have a law enforcement background, and you have tremendous connections in the law enforcement community, and you've been able to bring resources into the city of Yucaipa that a lot of cities don't have the option to do, right? So one of those things is we've been doing almost monthly what we call saturation operations. Maybe talk about that a little bit.
Saturation operation is basically what it's the name is. We bring deputies in from on overtime, and their job is not to go to calls for service for the most part, unless it's an emergent call for service. But for the most part, their job is to do proactive enforcement. Unfortunately, the deputies on patrol are so burdened with the calls for service that come in. A lot of times, there just isn't an opportunity for a lot of proactive enforcement because of the call for service burden. So this gives the station kind of that shot in the arm, and it allows these overtime deputies to come in and just solely focus on quality of life issues that we have in town. In fact, last month, with all the fires in Los Angeles, we had these significant wind events, throughout Southern California. We thought we'd do a red flag enforcement and Prop 36 enforcement operation. So very similar to a saturation operation. It's just we focused it a little bit differently. And on that red flag enforcement operation, we coordinated this operation not only with the sheriff's department, but with our law enforcement partners within CAL FIRE. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand is you'll see these, white trucks driving around town, and it looks like kind of a fire official vehicle, but it's actually, a dual purpose. Yes, they work for CAL FIRE, but they're also state peace officers, fully sworn state peace officers. So we brought them in to partner with us, help patrol some of these very high fire danger zones. And during that event, we were able to apprehend a arsonist who was out of compliance and had not registered with the sheriff's department as an arsonist per his court order, which is a big win for us. We don't need unregistered arsonists rolling around town that we don't know about. So that was among several other arrests that occurred during that operation, but they've been very, very successful.
That's fantastic. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department has a program they call Operation Consequences. And Operation Consequences typically focuses in cities and areas of the county that are pretty heavy crime areas, have serious crime going on there. So historically, Operation Consequences hasn't spent much time in Yucaipa, probably never even come to Yucaipa, right? Until recently.
Yeah, they came last year for the first time. We're grateful and fortunate that they came. Operation Consequences is a grant-funded program that's funded through the County Board of Supervisors, and it gives the Sheriff's Department the financial means in order to kind of basically do the same thing that we do at a much smaller level with these saturation operations, just on a much grander scale.
It's impressive.
It's impressive. They bring an army of law enforcement officers from all over the county, as well as state and federal partners.
I went to the briefing that morning, and Army really is a good way to describe it. The way they're outfitted, the vehicles, the number of personnel. I mean, it is an all-out blitz on the streets of Yucaipa, and
It was.
man, what an impact!
It was a huge impact. It's a huge impact to every single city that they go and serve.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, many of these operation consequences, from my knowledge, have been in areas that are plagued by a little bit more crime than Yucaipa is.
Mm-hmm.
So we were really lucky they came here, and for the short period of time they were here, they made a significant impact.
Operation consequences, saturation operations, the work of the SOP team, it's combined to really lower our crime here in Yucaipa. I think one of the things that has worked so well here is that we haven't just increased boots on the ground. I think, and a lot of times when people say they want to lower crime in a community, they equate that to the number of deputies on the street, right? And those boots on the ground are an incredibly important component of keeping crime
Sure.
low in a community. But I think what has made the difference here is that these targeted areas. We know the things that are really causing the problems here in Yucaipa, and those things were targeted and gone after specifically with these programs.
Well, I think it speaks to the leadership at the sheriff's department.
Mm-hmm.
They're definitely in tune with the pulse of the community.
Mm-hmm.
They're definitely in tune with what's important to city government, and without a doubt, the leadership of the sheriff's department has definitely focused their mission to benefit our city.
Right. Yeah. Now you brought some pictures to show us. I think SOP team related. Let's take a look.
I did.
All right.
So I brought some photographs. I think almost all the photographs I sent, in fact, all the photographs I sent are SOP team related. You can see the top left is a property that obviously has abandoned vehicles on it and a lot of trash and debris. It's a huge fire danger, as well as our municipal code prevents people from living in detached trailers. So you see that. Obviously, the electrical issues in the picture to the top in the center, how they power these trailers. Top right is kind of like a squalorly house. It's an abandoned house that homeless people were living in town, and that's part of the thing that our SOP team focuses on are these abandoned homes.
Mm-hmm. Drug houses.
We call them drug houses, but it's a home that's abandoned for whatever means, and unfortunately, homeless people 90% of the time or higher who are addicted to drugs kind of move themselves into it,
Mm-hmm.
and they destroy the house and kind of affect the neighborhood around it.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest are just some transient camp cleanups. I think I sent a few more. Yeah, top left is our deputies in some of our more rural areas cleaning up some transient camps, as well as some transients that they stopped. Obviously, their faces are blurred out for their anonymity. And the bottom one, it was kind of cut off, unfortunately, when it was put up here. But that's actually under one of our freeway overpasses. So there's a pretty large transient camp cleanup under one of the freeway overpasses. But at the end of the day, all of these homes are abandoned. All of these homes are, next to normal people that are living in their house, trying to raise their family, trying to do the right thing. And the last thing you want is an abandoned house next to you and homeless people are living in it. So I think those are those small impacts that maybe people, don't realize that the SOP team does. Obviously, our deputies out in the street every single day are not only handling those violent crimes and in progress crimes, traffic related problems, speed related problems, safety issues, but they're also handling those small things that you don't really see, but they affect the most amount of people.
So with all the success we've been having in the public safety area over the last couple of years, looking forward, what can people expect to see in the next couple of years from the public safety department?
In the short term, definitely for the next year, public engagement is going to be key for us. There's only so many deputies out on patrol every single day for a city of our size. The public is the eyes and the ears of both the fire department and the police department. So we really need the public to be engaged. If you see something, say something, report it. And not only from a violent crime perspective or a safety issue, speeding, something like that. Even like overgrown weed issue that you think, could be a fire danger, but also those small issues, transient camps, homelessness, those small quality of life issues. If you have an abandoned house that has been abandoned and, we don't know about it, call us, let us know. Hey, this house has been abandoned for a couple months. I don't know if you guys know about it. Maybe you guys could, put it on your extra patrol list.
Mm-hmm. I know that emergency preparedness was a goal set by the city council, an area that we need to bolster as a city. So I know that's going to be a major focus.
I'm really happy about that too.
Yeah.
Really happy about that. We definitely need help, in the public safety department, and having a dedicated emergency manager that's solely focused on, emergency preparedness and making sure that the city is completely ready for whatever Mother Nature throws at it, or unfortunately some sort of, terrorist incident or something like that, is really important.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy that council, approved that. I'm really happy you supported that. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Well, Trevor, you are doing an amazing job. Captain Walker is phenomenal. Lieutenant Scoville, Sergeant Ford, all of our deputies at the station just do a tremendous job, and the SOP team is just killing it.
They are. They really are.
I mean, and Yucaipa is a safer and better place to be because of the work you guys are doing. So thank you so much.
Anytime, sir.
And
Appreciate
thank you
it.
for being back here on Yucaipa 360. Well, roads are a big topic in town. I think a lot of people don't know how much public works impacts their daily lives, and how so many of the things that people care about in their local community tie back to public works. Roads, sidewalks, parks, all city facilities, streetlights. And we've had some pretty big wins recently in the area of public works. Collectively, public works and engineering departments are responsible for maintaining and improving the city's infrastructure, including roads, storm drains, parks, and other public facilities. And on this episode, we're discussing big wins or big accomplishments that have occurred over the last couple of years. And so it's great that we have with us Fermin Preciado, who, Fermin, you have quite a few titles here at the city. You're our Director of Development Services. You're also our city engineer and our public works director. But let's talk specifically about some of the big wins we've experienced here in your department over the last year or so.
Well, thank you. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to talk a little bit about some of the big wins in public works and engineering. As we all know, I would consider a big win. What I would consider a big win is the success that we've had with the pavement management program over the last several years. We have enhanced our pothole repair. In response to pothole repairs, the city council has prioritized and invested some money to purchase some equipment for our public works crews to be able to address these potholes as they come up and as they're reported to the public. City council has also awarded several contracts with pavement contractors for on-call services.
Yeah.
Some of those, sometimes we encounter a pothole that is maybe a little too much or too big to be able to handle with our resources, our staff, and the equipment that we have. So it requires some specialized equipment. So these contracts allow us to pick up the phone and make a call and have our pavement contractors respond. So that has been a big win.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of a new approach for the city, right? Because previously a lot of those repairs were handled solely in house. When I started here a couple of years ago, we had just 3 people in the streets division, then handling 209 miles of public roads, and it's easy to get backed up, especially when we have big rain events, which tends to lead to more potholes and more problems with the roads. And so this practice of supplementing our in-house staff with contracting with companies to come in and pick up so we can get these issues corrected more quickly. That's been a big success.
Yeah, that's been a big benefit. As you mentioned, we've added staff to our streets division, which has also helped that effort.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that, in the past, we've had an annual program where we would address these larger potholes, larger pavement repairs. Now we're able to do it at any given time. As I mentioned, we just pick up the phone and we can get our on-call contractors to respond. So there's and I believe it's made a difference. I think it has actually reduced the number of phone calls, emails, and especially the number of pothole reports that we get through the city app. So I would consider that a big win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, in every community, road maintenance is a big issue, and it certainly is here in Yucaipa. Before the city incorporated, this was, unincorporated county of San Bernardino, and there were a lot of roads that the city inherited when the city incorporated. A lot of these roads are fairly old. And as I mentioned, we have 209 miles of public roads in our town, which is a lot for a city of our population, about 55,000 people. And it's because we're a little bit more spread out than a lot of communities. We're not as densely built out. We have more rural areas. And so we have more roads than most cities, for our population, more miles of roads. And so it is very difficult and very expensive to maintain all of those roads. And so, we're very aware that there are roads that are badly in need of some TLC. And every year we go through a process, to prioritize those roads. But one of the things that I'm very excited about is how we've been able to reprioritize some of our capital improvement project funds, and particularly our Measure I funds that come in, to focus on repair and maintenance of our existing infrastructure, existing roads. And, the city council this year was able to allocate $4.1 million towards that program, which is the most in the city's history.
Yeah, 4.1 million is the most in city history, and as you mentioned, the 4.1 million is made up of Measure I funds and gas tax funds.
Yep.
And this year is the first year of our 5-year cycle. We've been going through 5-year cycles for many years now, where we will essentially test almost every square foot of the 209 miles of road. And we use those test results and the classification of the streets and the amount of traffic that's on those streets to prioritize the roads that are rehabilitated and maintained. And as I mentioned, this being year one of that 5-year cycle, it's great that we were able to invest that 4.1 million. So the public has probably seen a lot of road work out there over the last few months.
Mm-hmm.
Once the weather warms up in the spring, you'll see it pick up again to be able to use that 4.1 million that the city council has prioritized.
I think you brought a picture of some of that $4.1 million being spent. Let's take a look here. Here we go. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, for those of you that can see the photo, the photo on the left is our public works crews addressing some pothole repairs, and the photo on the right is one of our contractors who's actually completely repaving the street as part of our annual rehab program. So that the photo on the right, that's the type of work that you'll be seeing more of this spring as the weather warms up.
Oh, that's great. So in addition to work on our roads, the city over many years has invested really tens of millions of dollars in drainage infrastructure, right? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, drainage has been something that has been a priority of the city, and also it has also been a challenge. Many people aren't aware, but if you look at the overall city, the elevation difference in the city is almost 2,000 feet, from 3,800 feet at the upper level to 1,900 feet down by the freeway.
Yeah.
And what that means is if we get any type of storm event, the water is going to want to get from the high places to the low places. And we've invested a lot of money in drainage infrastructure. That includes the stormwater retention basins, our storm drain systems, our underground storm drain systems. And, over the last couple of years, we've had a couple big wins by completing some of those stormwater retention basin projects, some underground storm drain systems. And I think one of the biggest wins recently as it relates to drainage is the replacement of the Dunlap Boulevard Bridge.
Yes.
That bridge that was there for many years and was part of the original coast to coast highway was really undersized, and it created a bottleneck in the city. And what that did is that it essentially created that bottleneck and put a lot of the properties down in the Dunlap area and by the freeway in the what FEMA designates as a floodplain or the floodway. So a lot of the projects that we've completed over the years, and specifically the replacement of the Dunlap Bridge project, that essentially was a final step to remove over 450 properties from the FEMA designated floodplain, which created a lot of benefits, right? If you own a property and you wanted to add on to your home or develop a vacant property, there's challenges because it was in the floodplain, and I think it's potentially going to save a lot of people money because they won't have to pay flood insurance if their mortgage company requires them to pay that flood insurance. So that Dunlap Boulevard Bridge, I think, was a big win, eliminating the bottleneck, and it also provides another access point to the Gateway Center down where the La Quinta Hotel is, and the fuel AM/PM gas station. So,
well, that's great. Let's take a look. All right, what are we looking at here?
So in the photos, you'll see the new bridge in place, the construction of the new bridge, the steel on the side of the bridge that essentially is the new bridge. Now, this new bridge is only one lane, so it's meant to be an exit from the Gateway Center. And as you can see, all that space underneath the bridge, that is the Wilson Creek Channel, which essentially opens up that extra capacity for stormwater that has eliminated the floodplain in the Dunlap area.
Okay, nice. Boy, that is impressive. That big piece of steel right there. Yeah. Well, great. Okay. Well, let's talk about transportation a little bit. I mean, that's something that we all think about a lot, impacts us a lot, and we've had some projects in relation to transportation infrastructure. Let's talk about that.
Sure. The transportation or traffic enhancements has also been a priority for many years. Over the last few years, we've prioritized projects that will enhance traffic efficiency, traffic circulation. And some of those projects that we've completed are the widening of some of our major arterial streets. You've seen the widening of certain segments of Yucaipa Boulevard, Avenue E, and 5th Street, which will ultimately make it easier to get from point A to point B, so improving the traffic circulation. And I think a big win over the last year has been that we have been able to upgrade the traffic signal equipment along Oakland Road and Yucaipa Boulevard. And we don't see the benefits yet, but those upgrades are going to make it it's the first step to making to completing the project where we will interconnect or make it so all the traffic signals talk to each other. So it'll just, again, improve traffic circulation. And, that is something that we are hoping to use some grant funding next year to implement the new timing system for Yucaipa Boulevard and Oakland Road, so that should improve traffic circulation. And again, we've a lot of people have heard about the roundabouts on Avenue E and County Line Road.
Everyone's favorite topic.
Everyone's favorite topic, and I've mentioned this to many people many times, but we have that data, that scientific data that shows that a roundabout intersection is more efficient and safer than a four-way stop. We've seen we've seen the traffic be more efficient once those roundabouts are completed, and I know that right now we're working with the City of Cal Mesa to finish the County Line Road Corridor project that includes several roundabouts. We have completed the one that is within the City of Yucaipa, that's at County Line and 5th. There's still some utility work going on, but this year, County Line Road will be completed. It'll be completely paved, and again, that will make it easier for residents to get to the I-10 freeway and then home from the I-10 freeway along County Line Road.
Well, I'll tell you, one thing we've learned, if you're on social media and you're in a mood to really stir things up, post something about roundabouts. You're going to get a lot of comments and a lot of reactions to that. You brought a video, though. This is really interesting. I think people should see this. It really, I think, helps to illustrate what you're talking about here. Let's show that video and describe what we're looking at here.
So what we're looking at here on the top left corner is the intersection of 3rd Street and County Line Road before the roundabout was constructed. As you can see, it's a four-way stop. On the bottom right, you see the completed roundabout at the intersection of 2nd Street and County Line Road. And as you watch it, you could see just by looking at the video that the roundabout is operating more efficiently at the four-way stop. Every car has to stop, and you have to make a full stop and then yield to someone who was already there at the stop sign. But on the bottom right, you can see that traffic is moving a little smoother, a little more efficient. Nobody is stopping at the roundabout unless there's a vehicle already in the roundabout that they have to allow to go through. But I think this video kind of illustrates the efficiency of the roundabouts.
Yeah, no, that really does drive the point home right there. Yeah. Well, interesting. All right, so let's talk about the active transportation program. What is that?
The active transportation program, it's a program that was initiated by Senate Bill 99, I believe, and the purpose of it is to encourage the increase of use for active modes of transportation. So this program will provide grant funding for projects that will benefit pedestrians and bicycle users. We here at the city have been successful in applying for active transportation program grant funding over the last several years. We've completed 3 projects with this type of funding, and the projects that we have completed have been to install sidewalk from residential neighborhoods along Yucaipa Boulevard to Yucaipa Boulevard. So to meet the requirements of the program, we're essentially connecting residential neighborhoods to commercial areas along Yucaipa Boulevard, and hoping that people will use those active modes of transportation, and rather than driving to the commercial areas on Yucaipa Boulevard, they'll take advantage of the nice weather and walk and use those sidewalks. And as we all know, sidewalks they do make it safer for people to walk along a street. So we're fortunate we've been able to complete 3 of those projects here in Yucaipa, 3 of those sidewalk projects to connect those residential areas to Yucaipa Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
And over our capital improvement program for the last 20 years has prioritized those connections from residential areas to Yucaipa Boulevard. So this ATP, or Active Transportation Program grant funding, has allowed us to continue that effort and build these sidewalk projects.
All right, let's take a look.
This is a recent project that we completed along 15th Street, again connecting the residential areas to Yucaipa Boulevard. The photo on the left is the before photo, and on the right is during construction. As you can see, the sidewalk is being constructed again to benefit the pedestrians in the area.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, now let's talk about something that a lot of people are passionate about. One of the things that makes Yucaipa a great place to live is that we have a lot of recreational opportunities here. We have a lot of parks here in Yucaipa, and we've invested a lot into our parks. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, we do have a lot of parks. The majority of those parks have turf fields, for baseball or football or soccer or other uses. And I think over the last several years, specifically over the last 2 years, another big win has been utilizing. We've used grant funding from Cal Recycle to purchase some equipment that has allowed us to enhance the sports fields by replacing the fescue grass with hybrid Bermuda. There's a lot of benefits to this hybrid Bermuda grass in that I think the biggest benefit is that it will recover faster after you have kids and adults run around on the grass, especially with cleats and tearing it up. It'll recover faster. But we have implemented a program where we have converted the fields, as I said, from fescue to hybrid Bermuda. And it's interesting how this equipment that we purchased will do that. Our city council authorized a purchase of a turf shaver or turf planer, which essentially will shave the top inch and a half of grass and dirt from a field. And after that, our public works staff will use other equipment to apply a sand leveling course and then reseed it. And a few weeks later, we get some nice Bermuda grass to play on, and we've been able to convert the majority of our sports fields to this hybrid Bermuda. And this coming spring in May or in April or May. We plan to complete the program by converting the 4 fields at the 13th Street Sports Complex. Although that is the type of Bermuda grass there, it's not the type that we want. So those fields will be closed for a few weeks to allow for this work. Well, obviously, we'll coordinate with the user groups that are using the fields. They'll be aware of the schedule, but I think it's something that has been a big win for the city. For those of us that enjoy sports and recreation or watching your kids that play on these fields, I think it's great, and there are so many benefits. One of them, being that you are playing on a more level field. Level as it relates to the ground, to the surface, and which there's a lot of advantages to that. It just makes it more enjoyable and more safe.
Mm-hmm.
So I would consider that a big win, and something that we as residents, we will drive through the city on a city street and kind of take it for granted that somebody else is maintaining it. But when your kid or your grandkid is on a grass field playing soccer or softball or baseball, it's a little different because you're actually, it's something that I think it's people are more aware of. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're blessed to have so many great recreational facilities in this town. This show is about big wins. One thing I would not put in that category, speaking of grass, is the city's water bill every year. We're going through the beginning of budgeting season right now, and working on getting to that balanced budget. And my gosh, that water bill.
yeah, I thought the water bill at my house was high, but then I saw the ones for the community park and other city parks. So
Comes with a lot of grass.
yes,
Yeah. But anyway, for me, thank you so much. You and your team do a phenomenal job for the city, and you guys are very busy, and you've been having a lot of successes. So keep up the great work.
well, thank you again. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's no secret that the city has been operating in a structural budget deficit for the past 5 years or so. The topic of the budget deficit has been discussed in great detail. In fact, episode number 3 of Yucaipa 360 addressed this very issue in depth. So if city finances are something that is of interest to you, check out episode number 3 for a deep dive on that topic. The process of achieving a balanced budget and restoring fiscal responsibility has been an undertaking that the entire community has embraced. To help us take a look at the significant steps that have been taken to address the budget deficit, which now have the city well on the way to a strong fiscal recovery, our next guest is Phil White, Yucaipa's Director of Finance. Phil, turns out you've become quite a regular guest on Yucaipa 360. I think this is your third appearance.
Third appearance. Yeah, it's a big problem that we have, and so finance has been very involved in it. But happy to be back on the podcast talking about budget.
Well, and as it turns out, just about everything the city does, finance touches in one way or the other.
Got to pay for it. Whatever we do, got to pay for it.
I guess so. I guess so. So we've talked a lot about the budget deficit and how we got here, and we've really explored in depth that issue, both on episode number 3, but also out in the community. We've had a series of whether they're special city council meetings or community meetings to discuss the issue. And in the lead up to Measure S, our local sales tax measure that was on the ballot last November, there were quite a few meetings, and you and other city staff went on a kind of a road show to various groups in the community to explain that issue. So I don't think we have to rehash the entire thing here
Thank
today,
goodness.
right? But just kind of in a nutshell, how did we get to a position where we're in a structural deficit? And then let's talk about all of the things the city's been doing that have been leading us out of that deficit. And I think, the narrative here for so long had been that Yucaipa's finances were strong, that we were incredibly financially healthy, even unusually so compared to most cities. In fact, Yucaipa had been ranked at one point the least likely city in California to declare bankruptcy, which I think is still the case because we don't carry much debt, right? But in terms of our ongoing revenues versus ongoing expenditures, the city had been in deficit, and a lot of people didn't realize that. How do we get there?
Yeah. So What can happen is if you have good news, going back a couple of decades, we had good news financially from the city, and so we found ways to spend money and a lot of infrastructure. A lot of the spending was on capital related things, one time costs. There was a way to fund that capital without debt, which is fantastic. Also outside the general fund. And so in municipal finance, there's a focus on the general fund and there's a focus on, do you have a deficit? And if you can say the general fund is good, we don't have a deficit, all the ears shut and we're good. Let's keep going. And so over the course of time, there was no money in those outside funds, outside of the general fund. And so the general fund was loaning money to continue these infrastructure projects. Yeah, we don't have outside debt, but those outside funds do owe the general fund a significant amount of money. So over the last couple of years, we've been trying to kind of on an educational roadshow internally, externally, trying to get everybody on the same up to speed on going the same direction as far as where the city is realistically and how do we want to move forward. And so really 2 years ago is when we said, okay, we can't keep going the way we're going. And we started the heavy lift of saying, okay, we've got a structural deficit. How do we want to move forward? And so we worked with the community. We worked with the city council. City council gave us the directive to find more revenue. So we worked with the community and internally, everybody pulling on the same side of the rope, trying to exit that deficit position. So that's where we are now.
So in terms of how we got into the deficit, I mean, there are a lot of factors that contribute to that, right? One of them is that, for the past 20 years or so, the city has invested heavily in infrastructure. Mm-hmm. We built a lot of things. In fact, to the tune of somewhere around, $225 million of infrastructure, right? If you go back to, I believe it was 2008, 2009 timeframe, there was what was it, $70 million sitting in our reserves.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, we got up to $70 million in 2008 money. Yeah,
right. But the city built a lot, right? And these are things that provide benefit to the community, no doubt. But things like our police station, things like our community center, things like our performing arts center, things like our stormwater basins, right? Things that are of great benefit to the community, but they're very expensive. And then, of course, once you build something, you have to maintain it. And if that thing is a city building or facility, well, then you got to staff it. No use in building a performing arts center or a community center if you don't have staff there running those facilities, providing services to the community. And so while the spending, you could say, was one time, it created ongoing expenses for the city. So I think that was one part of it. The other thing, too, is that just everything has gotten more expensive as it does over time, right? Public safety being the primary example. I mean, public safety costs, our costs for our contracts for police and fire have grown exponentially over the past few years. I mean, by millions of dollars, and that's not unique to Yucaipa. Everyone in California, every city is experiencing those cost increases. And Yucaipa doesn't have the same sales tax base that a lot of cities do. Up until Measure S, this fiscal year, our expected sales tax revenue was only about $5.5 million, which for a city of about 55,000 residents puts us right near the bottom. I mean, we are, per capita sales tax, when you look at all the cities in the region, the cities around us, we were second to the bottom, right? With only the city of Highland beneath us, and that's going to change because they're getting a Costco, right?
Almost there, yeah.
Right. Cities rely heavily on sales tax base for revenue. So we went through this process of saying, okay, look, we have to correct this deficit. We have money in the bank, so we're not in a crisis that way, but we have to solve the deficit, or at some point, we'll burn through those reserves and we will be out of money. And we estimated that point would happen in about 2028, 2029.
Yeah, it was coming up quick in the trajectory we were going. Yeah.
So we had to fix it. And now let's talk about some of the things, some of the steps we've taken to correct that issue.
Yeah. So the cool thing about what we've been able to accomplish is it wasn't just one group. It wasn't just city staff. It wasn't just city council. It was city staff, city council, and the biggest piece of the whole thing was required community lift.
Yeah.
And so internally, 2 years ago, council gave us the directive of, hey, let's hold services and figure out this on the revenue side. So internally, we got moving right away. We looked at things like our cost allocation plan. We went through the process of updating that. We looked at user fees and charges to make sure that we're charging the appropriate fees. We made directives internally to say, hey, community services, everything that you're doing, not only deliver the service, but also take a look at any cost recovery efforts that you can accompany delivering the services to make sure that we're not just bleeding money out. And while community services is an easy one to point to say, hey, there's an event, let's recover our costs with that event, we were doing that across the board. All departments were looking to say, hey, when we're doing something, make sure that if there's an opportunity to recover costs, that we're taking care of that. So we did that internally, and that's kind of the non-exciting stuff of city life. City council historically had said with our solid waste franchise fees, hey, no increases, and had held that really low over the course of time. Last year, the city council in Yucaipa went out and increased that franchise fee, and they took a lot of flack for doing it because but it brought in over $2 million of revenue to the city, to the cause. And going back to $2 million is a ton of money for Yucaipa, but we were in a over $7 million deficit position at that point in time. So those two things were key. But then the biggest lift that I mentioned was we had to reach out with the community and say, hey, community, we need your help on this. And so we went through the Measure S campaign, and that was a heavy lift. And we went and spoke with everybody in the community that would talk to us. But ultimately, the community had the choice to say, hey, do you want us to reduce costs, which means close facilities, or tax yourselves, increase revenue? And so the community overwhelmingly chose to tax themselves in Yucaipa, which is a crazy thing to me, but to because they saw the value in the services that the city was providing.
Right. So one of the first things that we did, our governmental affairs department worked closely with your finance department to look under every possible rock to see where could we cut spending. Where could we increase revenue? What are all the options out there? What are all the things that other government entities do to raise revenue and or cut expenses? So that was an exercise that we went through. We created a financial fixer tool, which is a very unique tool. And we went out to the community and we said, look, here are all of the options that we see, right? You tell us, right? You tell us what you want, because can we cut this problem? Can we solve this problem entirely by cuts? Yes. But here's what that would look like. Right? It's not, the deficit was of such a size that it was, we couldn't just, reduce salaries by 10% and that would solve the problem. Right? It was bigger than that. I mean, we could probably lay off almost every employee and it wouldn't solve the problem. Right?
Could have, yeah.
It was that big. So community, you tell us, and because it was that big, it really became a question of what type of community do we want? Right? Yucaipa provides a very high level of service, whether it's public safety, community services, just across the board, we provide higher levels of service than a lot of cities of our size.
A lot of our neighbors. Yeah.
A lot of our neighbors. So is that something that the community wants to continue? Or do we want to go with another model? Maybe something closer to, what the city of Highland looks like, where, they do public safety, roads, and not really a whole lot more, right? There's not a lot in terms of community services and the other things that people have gotten accustomed to here in Yucaipa. So we had that kind of, I don't know, I guess I could call it existential discussion. Do we want to continue to exist as we do now, or do we want to fundamentally change what the city of Yucaipa looks like, right? And we went out and we had that discussion with the community, and the community, through our community meetings and through polling that we did, the message was pretty loud and clear, right? The community likes the services, and so then we said about, okay, let's identify then based on that what are the areas that we can increase revenue and still cut our costs, but without slashing the service levels, right? And so Measure S was by far the biggest piece of the puzzle, right? That was that's estimated to bring in about $6 million in revenue. So this current fiscal year, our when the budget was adopted, the deficit was $7.3 million.
Yep.
Right. And that was, I mean, when you started the budget process and we got, all the departments submitted their needs, we were looking at a $15 million deficit. And through just line by line going through and saying, okay, this is going to have to wait. This is going to have to wait. We're going to cut this. A lot of things that we really need were that those cans were kicked down the road and got us down to a $7.3 million deficit. So we set our goal at, look, let's try to come up with $10 million through revenue and or cuts. Because we know if the deficit that we're dealing with is $7.3 million today, it's going to be more the following year and even more the following year after that. So let's just say $10 million. How do we get to that $10 million? And Measure S was the biggest piece of that puzzle. Estimated $6 million of revenue, 1% sales tax. Really proud of the city's efforts there. 4 years ago, the city had attempted a sales tax measure. It was a half cent, not a full cent. And it, I think it got about 40% of the vote, right? The residents of Yucaipa, after being presented with all the information, made the decision by over 60% of the vote that, yes, we're going to implement Measure S because we want to keep these services, right? That's huge. And you mentioned our franchise fee for our waste hauling contract with Burtech. Yes, the council was, kudos to the council for having the political backbone to do that. But it was also a big lift in terms of renegotiating that contract. That franchise fee had been in place since the 90s, had not increased since the 90s. Now, I want to be clear, we're not saying that the trash rate never increased, right? Because cost of doing business increase, the cost for Burtech to provide the service increases over time. And a lot of that is due to mandates that have come down from the state, right? But the percentage that comes to the city, that franchise fee had not increased since the 90s, right? And so, as we looked at the organization across the board, there were a lot of instances where things needed to be updated, right? And so we went through that process. So that was an estimated $2.2 million of revenue. So now with that and the measure, we're at $8.2 million of revenue, which is great. And then the other thing I really want to talk about is this concept of cost recovery.
Yeah.
Yucaipa does community services in a very big way. We have a lot of facilities. We have services for youth, for seniors. We have recreation, ball fields, all kinds of programming. We have festivals, which is kind of a uniquely Yucaipa thing, right? We have festivals throughout the year that are very popular and help to build this sense of community, but none of this is free. When we looked at community services, the percentage of cost recovery was in the 30s. I think it might have been about 35%, right? We started to push this concept of cost recovery, which, by the way, for a community services person is kind of a novel concept. I think for most community services departments, they're not focused on okay, how do we offset the costs of providing this program? So it was a change of mindset, change of thinking. Right? And if you go back, so we were in the mid 30s. Fast forward a year later, so a year ago, we were in the mid 50s, about 55%, right? And in this current fiscal year, we're at 78%. So that's huge. I mean, in this current fiscal year budget, our budget for community services is about $8 million, right?
Yeah.
About $8 million. But the net cost, when you factor in the revenue, just under $2 million. Right?
Yeah, on a budgetary basis, yeah, and one of the challenges with municipal, as it's a community benefit is what its primarily focus is, and so we absolutely did tweak that, and Megan's done a phenomenal job of not only grasping the concept and running with it, but also getting her team to buy in to that and doing that a department wide lift. She's done a great job with that. Yeah, whenever we silo activities in a city, it makes it difficult. So what and the cost allocation plan cleans all that up to say, okay, this is the cost in your department or your activity, but now we're going to allocate all the the indirect costs as well. And so whenever we're saying, okay, that silo is this or that, it kind of muddies the water a little bit. But the point is absolutely the case where it wasn't a focus. Cost recovery was not a focus. It was hey, there's a community benefit, and we want to do this, and it's going to cost whatever it's going to cost. We're going to provide that benefit. We can't provide all benefits. we have to recover costs. So we need to focus on recovering all the costs. And so whether that's a doubling or a tripling or whatever, it's a significant portion of we're doing a much better job of recovering costs with all of the programming that we're doing over there.
Right. So Phil, you and I have committed that we will bring a balanced budget next fiscal year.
Yes.
We're in that.
Are there any takebacks on that? Can we take that?
No, I'm afraid not. I'm afraid not. No, we said that publicly as quickly as we could, so we can't take it back. But so we're in that budget process now, towards the beginning of that process, and in May we'll bring a draft budget for next fiscal year to the city council, get their feedback, go back, make changes, and then bring it back again in June for adoption, so that it'll be in place for July 1st, which is the start of our fiscal year. Yep. That budget will be balanced.
Yep.
Once it is balanced, it's critical that we put a plan in place to make sure that it stays that way, so that we don't get back into this same situation again. And this is something that you've advocated for, and it is something that the city council, to their credit, has adopted as one of their 5 major goals for this year, to establish a strategic plan for the city and a long-range financial plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's going to be huge. It's going to help us stay in balance into the future, into perpetuity, hopefully. One of the things that was a challenge, we had a $7.3 million deficit that was whittled down from 15, but deferred maintenance. I mean, deferred maintenance is always the one that it gets more deferred. You need to whittle down a budget, defer more maintenance, and so as we're getting back to balance and doing that into the future, we can't defer forever. We need to have a plan to maintain the facilities that we have brought on board, and make sure that anything new that gets brought on board has that maintenance plan in place. And so that strategic plan is going to capture how we get all the deferred maintenance cleaned up, and then how do we treat incoming projects to make sure that that we're contemplating ongoing maintenance and all costs associated with bringing on new programs and facilities.
Mm-hmm. Phil, you started in this position in October of 2022.
Mm-hmm. November of 22.
November of 22.
Yeah.
2 months later, there's a change in city manager.
Yeah.
Right. We're in the middle of transitioning to a new software. All of the financial data is being migrated over, so a lot of it you didn't have access to right away. Mm-hmm. Pretty shortly after that, the financial picture starts coming into clear focus, and oh my gosh, we've got a bit of a crisis here, right? You were thrown into a lot right away, and you're doing a phenomenal job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I know you don't.
I thought you were going to ask me if I wanted to take back on the acceptance of
no,
my position.
No takebacks. No takebacks. No, but really, you're doing a great job, and it has not been an easy ride, but it's we're grateful to have you at the helm of our finance department during this difficult time, and we're going to get out of this, and we are headed towards a strong financial recovery. It's going to be. It's been a challenge, but it's going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for everything you're doing.
No, I appreciate that. You're welcome. And there's certainly light at the end of the tunnel. We're almost there. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
So transparency is something of incredible importance at all levels of government. And it has certainly been important here in the city of Yucaipa. So much so that in 2023, the city council adopted a goal to increase transparency and communications, a goal that the council has kept for the 3rd year in a row. Well, part of being transparent is communicating, providing information. And we all know that the world has changed, and the way that we used to communicate, it just doesn't work anymore, right? The world has shifted. People receive and digest their information differently today than they did years ago. And local governments have had to adapt to that. And so getting creative with communications has become a really important aspect of being transparent. We're joined here today by our Director of Governmental Affairs and the city's Public Information Officer, Joe Perdetto. Joe is normally behind the scenes producing the show, so welcome to your first appearance on the show, Joe. Let's talk a little bit about what the city has done to improve communications and transparency.
Well, you talk about transparency and communications in government changing over time. And I kind of want to walk it back to kind of give some full context. The city clerk is the original transparency position, dating back in antiquity. The goal of the city cleric was almost religious and form to provide accurate information to the populace of the decisions of the Roman Senate or the Greek Assembly. Fast forward to the news media day, you had spring up public information officers and such that were adept at using modern communication tools to communicate with the public with now mass media. Move today, we have social media. Now the change is that we get to tell our story directly to the public. And that has been the real growth. So coming into Yucaipa, I came in it was same time as you did in March of 2023. And at the time, the city was using its social media channels to really broadcast activities going on. And it did a really good job, had great following. But what the change was that you brought in and we worked on is telling the city story of the policy and the successes behind the scenes. And that's really what we've done. We've aimed to do. We did a communications plan. We ironed out some of the folks on this episode, some of the things they talk about, the pavement management plan. That went in, big effort from the city side. We started launching a monthly report showing the number of reports of potholes, the numbers that we filled.
Right.
Whether the numbers looked good or not, we were going to show the public so that they could see how we were operating. And that's really what the city was aiming to do. And we took flack over the last couple of years of what the city's been doing or not. But over all of that, we aim to tell the story and show our homework. And that's really what I like to say is you can disagree, but we're going to show you our homework and then let's have a conversation.
Well, one of the first steps the city council took in 2023 was the adoption of the city's sunshine ordinance, right? And to me, that was a huge step forward in terms of transparency. Up to that point, city council meetings were not broadcast in video. They were audio only. Certain, documents were not required to be put online, such as, contracts that are approved by the city council. Those all have to be online and easily accessible to the public now. And, there's a whole list of items that are part of that document that the city is now required to do that are all designed to increase public access to see, behind the curtain, so to speak, of what's going on at City Hall to increase transparency.
Your contract is on the city's website. Not every city puts their city manager's contract easy for the public to find.
They're supposed to, but not all of them do. That's true.
Yeah, and it sometimes is very difficult to find. So the transparency portal is a big one. Over the last couple of years, we've launched a few things, and we're limited on time. So I do want to highlight some of the major successes.
Please.
And we have 3 forms of communication that have been nominated. We'll find out if we're going to be awarded, but they've been nominated for a statewide award for state public information officers. So every year in May, all the communication departments for the cities in the state come together for a conference and do the awards. And we're nominated for this podcast has been nominated. Since this podcast started, which we've had this conversation, I was skeptical of, but the level of transparency we get in long form is unparalleled. We have had more than 13,000 views across the different platforms, 700 downloads, and almost 1,000 watch hours on YouTube.
Wow.
So people can really go deep in the issues. The feedback we've gotten has been phenomenal. And some of the feedback from the executive staff and staff in general is that people in public will stop them and talk about the podcast with them. You're the city manager. People stop you for everything. If you're on city council, city manager, you get stopped. But line level staff doesn't typically get stopped to talk about issues in the city. But this podcast has initiated that. So it's been a really big success. So
that's great.
We're up for an award on that. We're also up for an award on the education efforts for Measure S. And that is one educational effort that I'm particularly proud of, because just 4 years ago, the city went for a sales tax, half-cent sales tax, failed 40 to 60. We went with the full cent sales tax and won 60-40. Completely flipped it, increased the amount. I attribute a lot of that success to the fact that we pioneered a level of transparency that is very hard to duplicate. It's a commitment to communication, and also I think having very good communication skills. And there's certain cities that don't have the right skills to communicate. And I think you have that. We have a team that has that. And what we did really well is we told the public what's at stake.
Mm-hmm.
And we did it in a way that you really can't really argue with it. And that included simplifying the problem. This is the problem. Our revenues don't match our climbing expenses.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple ways we can fix that. We can cut. And then we told them how much we'd have to cut.
Right.
And then we went and we had public town halls and we said, this is how much we'd have to cut. And then we engaged and we did a budget fixer tool. The budget fixer tool is also up for an award. So we have the podcast, we have our Measure S education efforts, and then the budget fixer tool. And we took it all to the public and we said, here's the problem. There are solutions. We don't want to lead you on what those solutions are, but through the budget fixer tool, we had some town halls and people used it and they came to the conclusion, we need a sales tax.
Mm.
The alternative is drastic cuts to the things that make Yucaipa a town that everyone loves to live in, right?
Right.
And so it was math, and we went out and we told that story. The public actually suggested the sales tax at a public meeting, which initiated that effort to put it on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
And then the city council wisely said, many cities say we need money. We go for a sales tax and it fails, and they never make the cuts saying that, promise that they said they would,
Mm-hmm.
which makes the public lose all trust that they're being lied to.
Right.
So this city council said, no, this is real. We're going to make the cuts. In fact, we're going to pre-authorize the city manager, you, to make the cuts because it's a big problem.
Right.
It was beautiful because then as staff, there's no advocacy. It's simply going out to the public. We did road shows. We went to all the convalescent homes, nonprofits, anyone that would have us. Phil White, our finance director, Jennifer Crawford, assistant manager, and we'd go out. People said, you should fix the budget by firing me.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. But
I mean, I can understand that.
yeah, for sure. And then Phil would politely educate them that you could lay off the entire administrative staff and still not make up half of the deficit.
Right.
And so that was news to people. Well, they're like, people are used to, why just tighten your belt like us? Well, this is exceeding tightening our belt.
Right.
But again, we had all the tools we needed to tell that story. Not everyone believed us. And some of those folks took our invitation to come and sit for hours to look through the books with our team. And again, an unparalleled level of transparency. And I'm so proud of it because the results speak for themselves.
Well, one of the challenging things for government in a situation like that is that, well, first of all, by law, the city can't advocate for or against a ballot measure, or a candidate. As a government agency, we can't engage in that way. We can educate, and I would argue that we have an obligation to educate. It needs to be a community-wide decision, what direction we go as a community, right? And the challenge there is that if you don't communicate, people are going to accuse you of not being transparent and of taking action without seeking feedback from the community, right? But when you do communicate, there's always a segment in the community that will say, well, you're trying to scare us, right? You're trying to lead us in a certain direction. And we were very careful to try not to do that, but the facts were what they were. The numbers are what they are. And so I felt very strongly that our obligation was to go and present the facts to the public, let them know what the choice was, and let the community decide, right? It would have been a disservice to the community to place a measure on the ballot and then not follow that up with clearly presenting the facts and what the choice really is. If that measure had failed, per the resolution passed by the city council, drastic cuts would have had to be made, or we would have, the structural deficit would have just grown, and by 2028, we would have run out of money, right? That would have been irresponsible. We could not have taken that path. So either revenue had to be increased or services had to be drastically cut. But the thing is, people value services. We felt that probably people would not want to lose most of those services, right? Now, there are places that we could cut back, and we have cut back, right? But presenting those options, and community, you tell us, what direction we're headed in here, right? And that's what we did. And then at the end of the day, when presented with all the facts and the clear choice in front of them, overwhelmingly the voters chose to continue funding those services.
Yeah. And so I brought a couple of screenshots from our Safe and Secure
Yeah, let's
website.
take a look. Yeah.
So our Safe and Secure website, this is just a couple of screenshots just showing, the aim was to use plain language, really communicate in very simple ways, take all the bureaucratic speak out of it, and just focus on plain English so that, people feel comfortable with the decision they have to make. I personally think that, like in math, you simplify an equation before you solve it. In communication, you have to simplify it to its, most simple terms so that it's easier to communicate it. So we did that. And part of the Safe and Secure website was a link to our budget fixer tool, which I brought. And this is more interesting. So we'll throw that up.
Yeah, let's take a look at that.
So this is really a tool. It's interactive, which allowed us to communicate the issue and let the public play as a policymaker. And we set a goal of $10 million because, $8 million was just basically for this fiscal year, but costs rise.
Right.
And we're seeing that now, right?
Yes.
So the sales tax gets us much of the way there. So this kind of explains it. And if you go to the next page, you could see some of the ways that you could interact with some of the options. And as you do increase your your taxes or decrease your spending, your bar for a combination of savings and revenue will climb. And the goal is to get to 10 million.
Right.
Once you hit that, you could submit. We got responses. We got hundreds of responses. And
this was very creative.
yeah, this was something that did not exist. We actually had to communicate with, we have some competent vendors, and we had to put the word out, and they had to go search, and we built this from scratch. And this is one of the reasons that it's up for an award, because this is not something that anyone else has ever done at a city that I'm aware of.
Right. It was very creative. It's simplified, but it is a very interactive way. People can engage, and people always say, well, just tighten your belt. Okay. Great. We can do that. Show us what you think that looks like. Right. And they could go onto that tool and they could decide what it is that they'd like to cut. Or maybe they decide, we can cut I'd be comfortable cutting these things, but maybe we can increase revenue over here so we don't have to cut the rest of these things, right? And then when they were done, they could submit that to the city to give the city feedback. It was interesting to me. You mentioned that, the idea to place a measure on the ballot was brought up at a community meeting, and that's true. But, the overwhelming feedback, whether from the financial fixer tool or the community meeting we had or the polling that we did, it was just crystal clear that the residents of Yucaipa like the services we're providing. And so placing a measure on the ballot was the right thing to do to give the community that choice if that's the direction they decided to go.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point. There were plenty of people who said, just cut.
Yes.
And for them, it was obvious, and we're dumb for not even considering it. But cities are in the business of delivering services. So you're right. When we polled, overwhelmingly, people like having police. Yeah. They like having firefighters. They like having parks.
Yeah.
And actually, the data showed they even like all the festivals up and down in Uptown, right?
Yeah.
So definitely lots of services. So those are some ways the city has really taken communication and transparency to the next level.
Yeah. And we plan to take it to the next level again in the coming year. There are some creative things coming up, new strategies, state-of-the-art cutting-edge strategies that we're going to employ here. All with the goal of being the most transparent local government, in the nation. I think we're going to get there. I really want us to set the new standard for how local government should be communicating with the public. And you're doing a great job. Your team's doing a great job. We're really headed in that direction. I'm very proud of the work in that area.
Yeah. Well, we had Sam Tolles on, which was a preview of the direction we're going.
Mm-hmm.
And just in 2024 alone, we had a 50% rise in reach in our Facebook activity.
Wow.
18% on Instagram, which already had a much larger following. So the aggregate numbers were very high. And our interactions on Instagram up 100%.
Wow.
And so really we're seeing a lot of momentum. And then when we interact with Sam and bring him on and really embed our storytelling from the groundwork of all the good stuff the city's doing, I think we'll see engagement rise even further and reach that goal that the city council and you have. And it's been a journey, and I look forward to seeing it evolve.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Joe.
right,
Really
thank you,
appreciate
Chris.
the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps up a very different episode of Yucaipa 360. Next time, we'll be back to our typical long-form podcast. But I thought it was important that we touch on a lot of different topics today, a lot of things going on in the community. And today we focused on a lot of big wins. And we're not trying to say that everything is roses. I mean, in every community, there are challenges. We certainly have our challenges here in Yucaipa, but I think it is good to pause every once in a while and reflect on all the good work that's being done in the community. And we sure are blessed to be here in the city of Yucaipa. I'd like to thank all of our guests today for taking time out of their busy schedules to help keep the community informed. Episode number 14 will drop in 2 weeks on Tuesday, March 11th. Until then, thank you for watching and listening to Yucaipa 360.
Dusty roads and open fields, big dreams got the city built. Bringing shops folks all adore, chicken fries and some more. Spots for days we love to see, Raising Cane's and sweet iced tea. Chick-fil-A on every block, keeping roots in all we got. Yucaipa gonna rise, stars and stripes in our skies. New places to eat and shop, rural heart will never stop. Mom and Pop still holding tight, city lights shining bright. Open spaces, room to roam, calling this sweet place our home. Pride in every street, you know, flags that wave and fields that grow. Modern flavor, city scenes, all wrapped in American dreams. Yucaipa gonna rise, stars and stripes in our skies. New places to eat and shop, rural heart will never stop. Pride in every street, you know, flags that wave and fields that grow. Modern flavor, city scenes, all right.